Okay, so there has been some news in the Project Zomboid space today. The developers have posted a new blog post on July 9th, 2026, which basically covers their next steps for the game. Now, those of you watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the description to this blog post if you want to follow along as we go. It's not really long enough for me to do my usual sort of like patch notes, summary analysis style video. Aside from anything, there are no patch notes in this blog post. So what we're doing is I'm actually talking through this live on one of my streams with chat, and essentially gonna edit this down for you guys, and we're just gonna go through everything in this blog. It says, "Hello survivors, it's July 9th, something of a key date in PZ lore. So we felt it was a great time to check in with you and to lay out our overall plans for the rest of the year. Then pack up the car, fuel up the generator, and let's get ready for a loot run." And the first thing it comes to is 42.20, which is apparently in the testing phase. The developers say it is a big update with a few yet to be revealed surprises. A big portion of the team has been designing and creating. Now, I note designing, so it's going to be something artistic, I would hazard a guess. There may also be some stuff coming from our channel soon that I can't specify what it is, but we're going to have some pretty cool stuff coming your way that I think will be an exclusive from us. So keep your eyes open for that. We'll announce the specifics once the update is complete and are targeting a release later this summer. So this is big because usually we don't actually get sort of like estimates of delivery times for updates. So the fact that they've been willing to communicate when their target is, I hope, tells us that they're confident. Additionally, unstable players will want to be aware that we have also been addressing issues around the following, that being character spawns, controllers, meat yield from butcher hooks, vehicle towing, zombie culling in multiplayer, map chunk loading when driving in multiplayer, and loads more. And they also note that due to the large content update, unfortunately, 42.19 save games will not be transferable to the new branch 42.20. Personally, I am over the moon with these two things: zombie culling and map chunk loading. Hosting a multiplayer server right now has been incredibly difficult, and I know our admins especially are putting in overtime right now, because to explain how this works, essentially there is a maximum number of zombies allowed in the game at one time for performance reasons, and essentially what it's been doing is that there's a zombie culling system that removes zombies to make sure that it doesn't go above that cap. Now, it's supposed to remove them from unpopulated areas so that you don't see the effects of it really, and only in extreme circumstances. That has not been working, and in multiplayer right now, there are very few zombies. I think our players on our server have had like the easiest wipe of their lives this month. But essentially my understanding is that there's just a very small amount of zombies right now, and that the zombie culling has gone overboard. So it's not really an enjoyable multiplayer experience, and we've had those issues for, I mean, at least a couple of weeks now. So that's the zombie culling issues that they're talking about. Map chunk loading, that's a pretty obvious one. That's basically when you're driving along, and if you hit one of those black boxes with the orange and white cones across the road, most often happens when you're driving because the map is having to load in ahead of you and it just can't keep up. It's really good to see this one addressed. Vehicle towing, that's been an issue for a very long time, on and off. Like it goes away for an update and then comes back, whether that's like vehicles getting stuck, vehicles glitching out, not being able to tow things properly, issues with certain ground cover. So like if you're towing something over grass, the vehicle just completely stops, stuff like that. So hopefully we see big updates to vehicle towing. I think this would be one that really needs to be fixed because it keeps coming back over and over again. Meat yield from butcher hooks. I actually haven't really dug too much into that one recently, so I don't really know what that's referencing. I imagine Maybe the yield of meat isn't sufficient or is way too much right now, but I don't know which. So maybe you guys can fill me in on that. And character spawns, I imagine this is referencing the new character spawn locations that have come in with some of the sandbox settings, like for Brandenburg and Irvington and stuff like that. I know the thing about save games is going to annoy some people, but we have apparently at least a few weeks before the release from this point to play out our games, and 42.19 will still be available. So essentially, if you want to stick with your current save file, you can. So this is the part of the blog post that was particularly interesting to me. The road to 42 stable and beyond. Now, they say at this point, we've identified that 42.20 is the build candidate that will move to the stable branch, and barring unforeseen circumstances, when it launches, it will do so as the default launch option on Steam. Now, that's huge because that's basically just confirmed that the next build we see is going to be the one that goes to stable. And I think this is huge. This is going to be like a really big time for Project Zomboid because of two things, right? We're going to get a massive influx of players because people will be streaming the game again. People will come back to the game to check out what's been new since they last played Unstable. And also, there's a very large portion of the player base that just plays the stable branch and doesn't really play Unstable. So all of those people are going to come back to the game at once. So they say the move to stable marks an important milestone for Unstable beta players who have been dealing with save breakages from multiple updates, and likewise for mod authors to have a far less changeable platform to build upon. Of course, this will also introduce Build 42 to the broader community that doesn't choose to opt in to Unstable builds, and allows us to gather feedback from those players as well as from more uninterrupted longer term playthroughs. And I think that's really important because I know a lot of what the devs are doing in Build 42 is targeted towards the late game stages. And it's hard to do that when you're pushing a new update that breaks save files every month or two. So they're hoping that by putting this onto the stable branch, they can start to get information from people that have been playing a single playthrough for, you know, a couple of months or more. This is a big part of the update as well. So they've basically said that mod authors will have a less changeable platform to build upon. So when this build goes to stable, there will be a lot of modders that have been waiting for this moment. Those modders are going to begin updating all of their old stuff, because the only reason a lot of modders haven't updated everything so far is because we keep getting updates on a really regular basis right now, and that means a lot of work for modders to keep their stuff up to date, because every update could break something, and usually does. We're going to see a massive influx on the mod workshop page when this goes to stable. Once all PC players are on the stable version, our current plans are as follows. Number 1, after any necessary hotfixes are identified and released, we will begin working on a patch consisting of tweaks and adjustments based on player feedback, primarily aimed at the late game. And we talked about that earlier. This is something they're really eager to get into, is how the game changes at late game now that we've got all this new stuff from Build 42. And it's hard to get that feedback when you're updating the game every month and breaking save files. So I think that will be interesting. A hotfix patch after a release is pretty standard. I can't obviously say for sure. I am speculating here, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see several hotfixes after the release of Stable Branch. That's just historically how things have gone. When things get pushed to the Stable Branch, problems come up when the wider player base gets access that maybe weren't caught during Unstable. Maybe the update itself had some problems and has caused things that need to be fixed. And usually they're not all caught in the first hotfix patch. So I would speculate that we'll probably have at least a couple of hotfixes that are needed, but that's just me. After they hit stable, once hotfixing and such is over, they will be releasing both their latest mapping tools, that's World Z, Tile Z, etc., and their in-house animation editor and integration tool, Anim Z. This is really big news. I don't think people are gonna see this as like huge news, but let me explain to you why this is such a big deal. So Anim Z is essentially going to allow modders full control over animations. And what that means is that we can start to see more mods that not only edit the behavior of zombies, but edit the animations to go with them. That opens the door for a lot of things to do with, let's say, creatures, mutants, right? Stuff like that. The world is your oyster, right? When it comes to the enemies now, you will be able to make the zombies into whatever you want. So if you're thinking of games like Stalker, for example, we actually did a lot of mods for this back in Build 41. The one thing we couldn't get was mutants. With this in play, that changes, right? You can create zombies with not just abilities, but they can actually have animations, models to support that, and they look the part in doing it. It's going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely huge for the game. Gustav says, imagine Last of Us zombies moving like the Last of Us zombies. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good example because we've already got the mods that do the sound effects and change the models. Now you're actually going to have zombies that fulfill the animations of the clicker, for example. Like it's so we're going to see some really, really creative mods when people start digging into this. And obviously as well, it's going to mean that like there's going to be more mapping tools available. I think what's been happening in the mapping space is that some community tools got released for Unstable, if I'm not mistaken, but now they're going to have the official stuff, and that's going to signal the time for a lot of map modders to get into updating their maps from Build 41. So we're going to see a big influx of maps that you know and love from Build 41 getting updated. So they talk about how localization is going well, and we'll just continue as it's going. Apparently over 1.3 million words have been translated into 29 different languages, and that's just since June. Now, obviously, that's not like a bigger deal for me because like, I have the privilege of being English, so everything was already in the right language for me. But I'm sure that means a lot to large communities that play the game right now in other countries. I know there's like a huge Brazilian scene. I know there's a huge like Korean scene for Project Zomboid, Spanish. So yeah, I'm sure that's big news for those guys. And then lastly, they say clearly there is plenty of work ahead on the road to our future major builds. But in addition, through the rest of 2026, we'll also be working on a Build 42 support update that focuses on optimization, additional modding support, and some player requested features and polish that didn't quite make the Build 42 stable cutoff. So that's essentially saying that once they get this to stable, which sounds like they're planning for 2026 just based on them saying the rest of 2026. So 42.20 is slated for stable this year, according to what they're saying here. So that's huge. But it basically just means that what they're saying is they're going to keep working on further development, like further features for that build as the year goes on. If you've missed it, the Project Zomboid map project, the official one, has now been updated. I'm sure we've all been using like the Build 42 online map. This is the one from Build 41 that has now been updated to Build 42.19. So the official one is now like back on the cards. You don't have to use the one that's been made up by the community. This is like now the official map tool that's been remade. So obviously you've got all of your towns like Brandenburg, Irvington. I'm not really sure what okay, the X's are just to replace like the POI stuff. Okay. Yeah. So same thing. You guys are pretty used to that by now, but yeah, the official map tool has now been updated. They're doing a 20% discount if you buy PZ and RimWorld simultaneously, basically because of the crossover between the two fan bases. I think we're all pretty aware that that's pretty much the biggest crossover that is currently out there is Project Zomboid and RimWorld. I was sorry to hear about this one, actually. I had quite a nice chat with Pat Bren once upon a time about my history in the Project Zomboid community and also sort of like the Stalker mods that we got made up when he jumped on to try our server one time for a blog post. But essentially he's stepping away from Project Zomboid on a full-time basis. Apparently he may still make the odd post in the future, but yeah, he's got a Patreon and he's got a I don't know if it's Ko-Fi or Coffee as well, but yeah, if you're interested in some of Pat Brennan's stuff, who was essentially like behind a lot of the narrative material for Build 42, then you can check it out there. And then finally, they've said we're also keen on a new initiative to assist medium to large game server providers. If you have a lot of Zomboid servers under your care, just to email in and they'll be able to access like a channel to give feedback and discuss hosting the game. I actually think this is going to be really good. Now, this may not seem like a big thing for you guys at home, and I totally understand. There are a ton of community servers, but what this essentially means is that official server providers will now have a direct line to the dev team, which is crucial for Project Zomboid because there are a lot of very nuanced issues that come up with builds, right? For example, the zombie culling that we're seeing right now. This sort of direct line of communication is not only going to allow them to report issues that they're seeing, but also for the developers to cotton onto those problems a lot quicker and be able to suggest potential workarounds and stuff like that. So hopefully this will be largely beneficial to the multiplayer scene, but time will tell. And that's basically it from this update. So big news is essentially 42.20, which is the next build. It's currently in testing, but will be the build that goes to the stable branch. It will be aimed at release for sometime later in the summer, and they're aiming to get it to the stable branch later this year, sometime in 2026. That's the big news. And I wanted to share that with you guys. I think it's important. Hopefully you're not opposed to this method of video making in the future. This is something new for me, but if you enjoyed it or if there's anything that you guys want to know about, please do feel free to ask me down in the comments of this video. I would be more than happy to come back to them as best as I can. Thank you very much for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.